It is a matter of fairness and equity as to how we deal with this problem. Unfortunately, it isn't a matter of fairness or equity as to how the climate deals with the problem if we keep adding to it. What I mean by that is this. It is absolutely true to say that this problem was created by the development in the Western world, that the chief responsibility for dealing with it lies with the Western world. But it is also absolutely true to say that unless the world as a whole reduces emissions in the future, we are all going to be worse off. In other words, the climate up there doesn't say, well, that emission came from India or China, and that one the climate's fine with, but unfortunately that one came from America or Europe, and that we don't want. That's not the way it happens. So the issue really is this. We are going to have to make a substantial transformative effort to deal with this problem. And that transformative effort may start with the developed world, but it can't end with the developed world. It has at a point got to include also the developing world as well. I sometimes say to people in Europe and America, just think of the scale of the change that we need here. Because in America, the per capita emissions are round about 10 times the global average. 20 times India, I think. So in Europe, less than that, but still vastly more. If you think about then just America coming down to the average, it means the average per capita emissions is about 1/10 of what it is today. In Europe, say about 1/6 of what it is today. Now you're not going to do that, or we're not going to do that, without a transformative, an almost revolutionary change in society and the economy. And the question then becomes, well, how do we bring that about? And how do we then also make sure that as the developing world grows, that we have the access to the technology that is being developed and the financial support in order to make the difference? Because here is the point that I really want to make. It is not fair, and it will not happen, that as a result of climate change and the concern over climate change, we say to India and to China, to the other developing countries, well, we don't want you to grow. We grew, but you can't. That is not going to work. It would be unfair, it would be wrong, and in any event, it's not going to happen. What I think is fair is this. If the developed world, America, Europe, Japan, is prepared to take really strong, definitive action for a substantial cut in emissions, with the right incentive system to deliver that, then it is fair that we ask India and China to play its part, and in particular, if we are, as we should be, in the developed world, prepared to help with the transfer and access to the technology, and help with the financial support necessary to make that happen properly, then in those circumstances, we could construct a global deal that would make this thing work and hang together. But those are the elements that need to go into it. India and China cannot have the same obligations as the Western world, as the developed world. On the other hand, we need to get to a point where the process of change here, we help to accelerate in order to meet the necessity that the climate change is imposing upon us. So this is what I think is the issue politically. It's when we talk in the United Nations process, and it's been a Herculean exercise to get the international community to this part where we say, we agree there's a global deal, we agree everyone's in it, we agree at the heart of it there should be a substantial cut in the emissions, the order of 50% globally. What is the deal? And what is the meaning of the phrase, common but differentiated obligations? That's the question that we've got to resolve. In other words, what is it reasonable to say that the developed world has to do because it has developed and is the origin of the problem? And what is it reasonable to ask the developing world to do, given that they need to grow, but given that the climate still needs to be rescued? That is how I see the political dilemma that we face. And what I found when I was in government was that it was quite hard to locate where that answer was going to be, because, you know, for climate change, there's not the World Trade Organization for Trade or the International Atomic Energy Agency for nuclear power, or, you know, the IMF for international monetary issues, or the World Bank for development. There isn't an institutional mechanism that's very easy for this. I mean, the work that Dr. Bachar and his colleagues do is fantastic on the science. I think the work that the UN is trying to do in the negotiation, as I say, is absolutely heroic. But we need to think as between these major players, how do we put this deal together? And I really wanted, after I started this process in office in the G8 in 2005, to carry it on afterwards. And the Breaking the Deadlock initiative, which the climate change group have kindly agreed to put together for me, is to try and bring together different experts from all around the world to use the intelligence, the creativity and the knowledge of people like Dr. Bashari, but also Nick Stern and other people who've been very active in this area, so that we assemble the right elements of the scientific and technical answers. And then what I think I can try and do, at least, is to help put the thing together in a way that makes political sense. Because sometimes I used to say to people, you know, when I was in office, tell me the answer to this. And they'd say, oh, there's lots of answers out there. And then they'd give me a few. And I'd say, look, I'm just telling you as a politician, that is not going to fly. You know, they're not going to sell that to their country. So, you know, you get some group will say, well, actually, you just got to tell China and India not to grow. And you say, well, thank you, but I don't think that's going to happen. Or, you know, you've got to tell people that they can't enjoy the increased living standards that they got in the West, but they've got to give them all up. There's not a hair shirt solution to this. There is a scientific and technological one if the right global deal is put in place that incentivizes it. So that's what we're trying to do. And, you know, I think India's got a great role to play in this. And I think this is a moment when India can exercise real leadership on this issue, because it is such a powerful developing nation, because the Prime Minister's made it clear by leading the Climate Change Council that he personally is giving us support to find the right response to this issue. And because in the end it is here that many of the effects will be felt, and it's here also that much of the benign and environmentally beneficial growth that we want to see will have to take place in the future. So there are good reasons for India to take a strong leadership role on this issue. And I will do whatever I can in a small way. I mean, out of office, it's not the same as being in office. Many good things about that, and a few constraints, obviously. But I think, you know, this is an area where the world is in the market for ideas. And those ideas can come from many different quarters. And if I can make a small contribution in my own way to giving the answer to this, then I would be grateful of the opportunity to do it. So I'd like again to thank everyone very much for coming along this evening, and to say I think this is, this is a moment when, you know, yes, we can marvel at the scale of the challenge, but, you know, I kind of like to be an optimist in politics as well. I mean, I think you've sort of got to be when you're the Middle East envoy. It's, I think, a moment where we should also, there are tremendous opportunities. I think if we create the right framework here, the technology will develop in ways we can't even guess, and through people we don't even know of, and the impossible will seem possible, and the unachievable will be achieved. All this would happen, but it's got to begin with the world truly understanding the nature of the global community today and being prepared truly to act on a global basis. Thank you.